Do you wish the president wore a mask in public?
Well, the president did wear a mask while he was less than 6 feet in a occasion where that was important I think, when he was traveling last week. I think I'm not with him every day and every moment, so I don't know if he can maintain social distance. I've asked everybody independently to really make sure that you're wearing a mask if you can't maintain the 6 feet. I'm assuming that in majority of cases, he's able to maintain that 6 feet distance.
That is Deborah Birx doing the best
she can,
trying to keep the president's ear on matters that matter most to her, and that is obviously saving lives and stopping the spread of this pandemic even further, though, Mika, obviously, it is a very difficult position that she is in.
That the president has put her in. Joining us now, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst, Eugene Robinson. Also with us, author and New York Times columnist, David Brooks. His book, The Second Mountain, A Quest for a Moral Life, is out today in paper book.
Well, David, the timing is certainly good for Americans who are suffering through this pandemic in whichever way they are. You talk about this spiritual renewal when you wrote this book and it came out. I read Peggy Noonan's column this past week, and she talked about how this pandemic, though tragic, has changed a lot of Americans, and that she said we just may come out on the other side a plainer, and a better people. What are your thoughts as this book's released in the middle of this pandemic, as so many Americans find themselves in that valley between two mountains?
Yeah, the book is about going through hard times and coming out better on the other side. And I think what you discover in the valley is that you get broken open. You can either be broken by suffering in hard times or broken open. And those who are broken just get hard and they're unfeeling, frankly, like our president. And those who are broken open get softer. They see deeper into themselves. The great theologian Paul Tillich said, in moments of suffering, they interrupt your life and remind you you're not who you thought you were. They carve through the floor of the basement of your soul and reveal depths that you did not know you have. And what you find down there is the ability to care for one another. You lose some of the ego ideals that you had. A friend of mine said when her first daughter was born, she realized she loved her more than evolution required. And I've always loved that, because it's an idea that we have an ability to care for each other that's just deeper. And just listening to Mika read that letter today, I saw how moved Mika was. I saw how moved I think we all were. And it's a fight for decency. And in hard times, some people get hard and brutal and they lose a sense of humanity. And in other people, it's magnified. And I think aside from the top, America has been magnified in its humanity for each other. And we're in that struggle, the struggle between the basic forces of decency and care and the forces of hatred and sort of a callous indifference.
Yeah, Gene Robinson, I had brought up with John Heilemann, Paul McCartney earlier. And I remember a quote that Paul McCartney said. Somebody asked him once in Rolling Stone why he was such an optimist. And he said, well, I just look around me every day, and you know what? We've got them outnumbered. Talking about optimists, people who think positively, people who try to be kind to other people. I've always felt that as well. And you look at this crisis, I know I read these numbers all the time from polls, but only 8% of Americans say they don't want to wear a mask, and they're not going to wear a mask. That means 9 out of 10 do. 75% want to protect their children. They know it's not time to send them back to school yet, even though Donald Trump wants businesses to restart and for workers to be able to get back to work and have a place to basically put their kids for 8 hours a day. But I think the pandemic has shown that the Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, have done an incredible job bending this curve.
You know, I think that's true, Joe, and I really hope David is right. I hope that in the aggregate we are being broken open rather than broken, and that we do, as Peggy wrote, come out of it, come out of this better. You know, there are powerful forces led by the President of the United States who are militating against that. And that's what's so frustrating, because I think the basic instincts of Americans, certainly of the people who I know, are to try to care for one another, are to try to do better, or to try to keep everyone healthy and avoid spreading the disease and do the right thing. But there's this crazy, powerful sort of trend in the other direction that is being amplified by the most powerful man on the planet, and that is that's outrageous, and it's horrible. I too was moved by the reading of that letter from Mr. Klausutis. It was just wrenching, and to see what he's being put through and who is putting him through it, it's just that depresses me, and so I'm glad we have David on, and we can feel uplifted again, because that is horrifying. It's just horrifying.
David, your thesis in the second mountain is that we all climb one mountain in the earlier part of our life, which is building a life and building a reputation and getting an education and getting a job and building a family and reaching all those status symbols that we think we need to achieve. And then we realize there's another mountain to climb. But to get there, you go into a valley, and you write in your book that the valley is the making of a lot of us, that we find ourselves in that valley before we climb that second mountain. So if we are in a valley right now with this pandemic, and we most certainly are, what do you think we learn in this valley that sort of remakes our country? In what ways does that manifest itself?
Yeah, when I talk to people about what was the making of your life, no one ever says, hey, I had a great vacation in Hawaii, and that was the making of me. It's always a dark moment of struggling. It's a moment when you find some deeper value, some deeper thing that you really want to dedicate your life through. And what I think this is teaching us is that we can trust each other. We enter as a country that's been broken. Every 60 years, this country goes through a moment of deep crisis where we really hate each other. 1770s, Andrew Jackson, the 1830s, 1890s, 1960s, today. And to me, what's fascinating is the intersection between an earthquake, which is our national crisis, and the hurricane, which is this pandemic. And that means this is a moment of deep change, deep change. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to learn that we can trust each other. We enter a period where, among young people in particular, 65% say people are not trustworthy. 73% say most people are selfish. And I think what we're learning is that's not true, that people are showing up for each other by wearing masks, by starting food banks. I have a friend in San Jose who's got 9,000 kids he's doing online education for. A lot of people are doing something extra to make this a better country. And from the ground up, we're showing, oh yeah, other people are good. Other people are trustworthy. And out of that social trust, once you build it, which has been declining for 60 years, once you build it, then that's the lubricant which you can build a lot of stuff out of. And I think we're going to enter a political phase where we're going to realize our own vulnerability, which we did not before, and build political structures to guard us against the damages and dangers that happen in the world, which we sort of ignore.
And Gene Robinson, in building that social trust and learning to trust each other, seeing that we can, what's the impact to your points, your piece's point, when you can't trust the president?
The impact, I think, has to be that the president becomes less relevant to how we conduct our lives. It has felt during this pandemic as if we haven't really had a president. We've had kind of a Twitter troll heckler in chief who has said not just outrageous things, but physically harmful things, trying to get people to take hydroxychloroquine, a drug that causes heart problems and this and that. And to some extent, in my experience, I have run into people who are just kind of tuning him out. and who who turned off the daily briefings before he ended them, who don't follow his every utterance, and who necessarily, because they're at home, concentrate more on family and on what they're doing in their daily lives to get us past this. And so I think that's optimistic. But it's a sad thing that we have to sort of tune out our leader in order to get through this.
Yeah,
David, why don't we close with you and just ask what is it as people are watching this show? What is it that you would hope they would get out of this book at this time, and as they move forward through a summer that the path is not actually clear, and going into the fall, which may actually be yet another mountain for all of us to climb?
Yeah, I would hope they get a moral vocabulary. It was about a time in my own life that was tough, and sort of who I went to get some spiritual development and spiritual succor. And so I sort of share the wisdom that was given to me. Somebody once said writers are beggars who share with others where they got bread. And I got spiritual bread in a hard time from a lot of wise people. And I think we're going through a time where we don't control our economic destinies right now. And we don't even control our physical destinies, but we control our response, our spiritual responses. And so I would hope that the spiritual development is what we put at the center of our lives right now, in our relational development, our development with our families and our friends, and everything. When everything else is taken away, they can't take that away from you. And so this is really a little guide to that kind of spiritual and relational growth.
the book is The Second Mountain, A Quest for a Moral Life, out today in paperback. David Brooks, thank you very much. Eugene Robinson, thank you as well. Gene's new column in the Washington Post is entitled An Indelible Image of This Pandemic, Trump Without a Mask on a Golf Course. Up next, we'll talk to the head of the country's largest food and retail meatpacking union about the large number of infections among grocery store and meatpacking workers and what it means for the nation's food supply. Keep it here on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.